So this week, the rubber hits the road and the 30-day lead gen challenge. Looking at the process, by now you should have gone through how to connect and observe, how to give value, how to engage, and how to review to get people engaging back with you from the value offer process that you followed last week. And so this week, we're really going to talk about the talking stage and the invite stage, which is the piece that I see a lot of people skip over. It's the slightly more awkward piece because it's the piece where we have to really create some genuine conversation and we have to lead the person into a call to action, whether that's an invite to a call, an invite to a group, lead magnet, whatever it may be. So this part is the part that you really need to master if you want to turn direct messages into dollars, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do that today. So at this point, before we go through the talk process, I want to reference back to this image that we looked at together last week. If you remember my story about don't assume anything and the importance about really understanding and uncovering the pain that the person is actually facing. Once again, as a recap, don't assume just because they're on an island surrounded by sharks, that's a bad thing, that they're trying to get off the island. You want to really learn and get to know the person to know how to approach the conversation correctly. So as we progress into this stage, the two things I want you to remember when we're going into the talk stage of the converti process, you are not pitching. We will walk through how we get to the pitch and how we get to the call to action. But this stage is not when you are going to be pitching to the prospect. What you are doing is you are discovering. You're discovering, do they actually need help? And let's dive in a little bit deeper to understand what that help might look like before we transition into inviting them to our call to action. Now, how do we do that? First of all, let's talk about the talk stage. This really is about you starting to build conversation, and there's a reason I call it the talk stage. I want you to think of it as if you've gone to a networking group and you've got past the initial little awkward connection stage where you've asked their name, they've told you, you've told them your name, and you've had that little awkward back and forth. You're now at the stage where the conversation's starting to warm up a little bit and you're just chatting to get to know the person a little bit more. So what each of you should be doing is you should be creating a list of qualifying questions that you need to know the answers to in order to know if this person is ultimately going to be a good prospect for you or not. These are some of the examples that I like to use, and you want around, say, 3 to 4, maybe 5 at a push. Don't have too many because you do want to create an engaging conversation with the person, but it is important that these questions help you actually learn more about the person and learn if they are the type of person you want to work with. So for me, I tend to like starting with something like this question here, which allows me to reference back to an initial point that we discovered when we did the initial engage stage of the process. So for me, it's something like, I'm just curious, how long have you been in business, for example? So when they come back, they will give me a number, and then that can tell me, like, if they're like, hey, I've been in business for 1 month, okay, maybe not the type of person I want to work with right now, at least for the specific offer that I'm doing. But if they come back and say, hey, we've been in business for 5 or 6 years, that tells me they're more established, they maybe have a bit more money behind them, and so that is a good indicator. Other examples, I'm just curious, how long have you been going to the gym? How long have you been on your weight loss journey? How long have you been trying to eat more healthily? How long have you been focusing on improving your mindset? There's lots of different ways that you can spin this to your industry, your niche, in order to start uncovering a little bit more about the position that person is in. Now, in the next section, I'm going to walk you through to how to actually transition between each of these. There's some very important points. But for now, we'll skip that just so that I can walk you through the qualifying questions I like to use. And then I'll walk you through how to actually transition properly between these questions next. So once I've found out in my example how long they've been in business for, I then want to bridge that into the next important point for me, which is understanding, in my case, the types of clients that they work with. So I would say something like, oh, nice, what kind of clients do you typically work with? Once again, if you're in the fitness space, it might be something like, what kind of workout do you like doing? It might be, what kind of frameworks do you use to improve your mental health? What kind of software do you use to do your accounting? Once again, lots of different ways that you can reposition this question to then dig in a little bit deeper into more about the person so that you can keep qualifying them. So to give you an example, in my case, what kind of clients do you work with? Let's just use our intent magnet system as an example, which is for automating direct messaging. So if somebody came back and said, hey, we work with local homeowners, maybe not such a good fit for that particular software that we have. That software is better if you have a global audience, or at least if you can target, say, an entire city or entire state, rather than just targeting a specific neighborhood, for example. So for me, it's important understanding a little bit more about the types of clients they work with so that I can uncover whether our solution would actually work for them. Now, once again, the whole reason we are having this conversation is, yes, build some rapport with the person, build some relationship, but also start uncovering whether this person is going to be a good fit, so we don't end up wasting a whole lot of time booking meetings with people that are just not the right target persona at all. The next question I like to ask is helping them fast forward a little bit to understand what they want to achieve over the next X period. Could be 6 to 12 months. I like using 3 to 4 just so it's a little bit more short to midterm. So as my example here, what's the main goal you're currently working towards for the next 3 to 4 months? When they come back to me, they're going to come back to all sorts of things. They might give me their personal goals. They might give me their financial goals. They might give me their work goals. It really doesn't matter. It just opens up that conversation again to get more into the mind of the prospect to understand what direction they're heading in. If they come back and they start talking through goals that are just completely off topic, then I will help guide them back on topic. If you need help with how to do that, let me know. I can walk you through the process to do that. But really, I'll guide them back to the point where I get them answering questions about their business, for example, if they've started giving me personal goals for the next 3 to 4 months. Here, I'm trying to uncover, have they really thought about what they are trying to achieve? How clear are they on, because the goals that they have are usually going to be directly tied to some pain points that they've got right now. So understanding their goals goes a really long way for understanding where I might be able to fit, where some of the software solutions, consulting that I have might be able to fit in with what they're hoping to achieve over the next few months. And then last but not least, we then want to understand what would happen if those goals aren't achieved, what could prevent those goals from being achieved. And so I just like a really straightforward question like this one: what do you feel is preventing you from getting there now? You're welcome to rephrase that how you feel comfortable. But at this point, we want to help them gain clarity on what it is that might lead them to not achieve that goal. Now, if you have a real A-type personality, you're probably going to get some ego-driven answer, nothing can stop me, which when you get those kind of responses can be challenging. The important thing there is just to acknowledge their enthusiasm, their drive, and then there are ways to bring that back into a conversation to help them uncover where they might need some help. If you do get those real strong A-type personalities, chances are each one of these questions, they're going to try and give you really short, sharp answers. They're going to dodge and avoid the question or give you sarcastic or, like I say, ego-driven responses. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a bad thing. I wouldn't stop the conversation just because that's happening. I've had plenty of conversations that have started that way, and if you look at the start of the conversation, you would feel like it was going nowhere. But by the end, I managed to turn them around and get them bought into a call with me. A piece of advice that I was given when I was learning how to handle direct messaging, which has always been very helpful, is basically just assume that the conversation is not going to go well from the start. Assume that it's going to be an uphill battle and that you're going to have to draw blood from the stone to get the answers that you want. And if you go in with that assumption, then every conversation just gets easier and easier because, they actually give you more than you're expecting in the first place. Now, with all of that said, how do we actually keep driving the conversation and flow between these questions to keep them moving? So this part I cannot stress the importance of enough. This stage is about having a conversation. It is not about an interrogation. This is a mistake I see a lot of people make when they are trying a direct messaging strategy. I see a lot of people make this mistake even when they just reach out to me to try and connect with me and maybe sell me on something. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how to avoid that. The framework that we're going to use, I've laid out here. So we're going to react and respond to what they say. We're going to add a question to keep the conversation going. And then if you remember back to last week when I talked about how to create conversational bridges, we're going to create bridges in the conversation to keep it moving forward as well. So as an example here, I've put a response that you may have got if you had, say, a weight loss offer, for example, and you had started talking to the prospect about their weight loss journey. So the prospect has responded, "I've been trying to lose weight since Christmas." Now, what most people do, and what I see happen a lot, is a really generic response like this. Basically gloss over what they've said completely, don't even react to what they've said, and then dive straight into your next question. Okay. What's the main goal that you're currently working towards for the next 3 to 4 months? I see this all the time. And I bet if you look back through your own messages that you've sent people, there's a pretty good chance that you've fallen into this trap as well. It's really easy to do when you're in direct messaging because you're trying to keep the conversation going. You're trying to move it forward. But if you think about it, you would never do this or I would hope you would never do this in a real conversation. When somebody says something to you like, "I've been trying to lose weight since Christmas," you're not just going to gloss over that and then immediately move on to the next question that you want to ask. So a better way of approaching this, using this framework up here, and like I say, this is an interrogation. Don't do this. This is a conversation. So step one, we're going to react and respond to what the person has said. So, "I've been trying to lose weight since Christmas." "Yeah, Charles, actually, I know a lot of people set goals for themselves around Christmas, New Year. That's super common." So nothing crazy here. All I've done is actually referenced what they've said so that I am showing that I'm paying attention and that I'm actually taking the time to understand what they're saying. Now, exactly the same sort of question here, because originally I wanted to know what's the main goal, but I've now transitioned that reaction into my question. I've referenced back to what they've said about losing weight. I've added a little bit of insight there because I'm talking about the fact that I know a lot of people set goals for themselves around Christmas, New Year, showing that I have a bit of industry insight. If possible, I've put something in there to help the person feel at ease about it, right? Something like this could be quite a vulnerable statement. So just a really simple response like that, super common, can go a really long way. I was actually having a conversation earlier today with somebody who was being really hard and really down on themselves. And where I could tell that when I added a few little bits of praise like this in the conversation, they're probably somebody who doesn't get a lot of praise from many people. And so they just lit up as soon as I started adding those little bits of praise. So just keep that in mind when people are opening up and being vulnerable with you. So I've then transitioned that into the question that I really wanted to ask. What goal did you set for yourself? How are you tracking towards that right now? So this is my next qualifying question that I want to know, but I'm not just going to end it there. I'm also going to create some bridges to help them continue the conversation on as well. So in this case, I know with my own clients that maintaining their goal past March is always a challenge because of X. help if I could spell challenge correctly. There we go. Once again, fill in the blanks here on what X may be using your industry insight. I'm by no means a fitness guru, but you can see my point here. For the bridge stage, what I'm trying to do, I'm starting to pepper in a little bit that, hey, this is something that I know about. It's something that I've worked with people on, without outright coming in and pitching them and saying, hey, come buy my program. I'm starting to show a little bit of that industry knowledge by creating this bridge. And this allows them to go in a few different directions, right? They might continue on the conversation because you've given them the opportunity here. They might say something more about the experience that they've gone through Christmas. They might come back and answer your question, or they might pick up on this part of the conversation and say, oh, tell me more about the clients that you worked with and how they're progressing past March. So you've got 3 different points here that can continue the conversation to help drive it back to your other qualifying questions that we created up here. Now, one thing that does happen, once again, probably more with the A-type personalities, is they might respond to this piece and they'll quite purposefully ignore the actual question that you asked them. When that happens, I often just call them out on it. So they come back, they answer, maybe say something about one of these 2 statements up here, ignore my question completely. I'll react to what they've said, and then I'll just call it out. Oh, I noticed you skipped over my question. Sometimes they'll come back and say, oh, sorry, what was the question? I missed it completely. Sometimes they'll just come back and answer the question at that point. So don't be afraid to call them out if they are not answering your questions, but just do it in an authentic way that shows that you're actually engaging in conversation and you're not just purposely trying to drive them down your line of questioning. Now, a couple of things I want to call out with this. This talk stage is not about asking yes/no questions. Do not ask just yes/no questions. There are some questions you're going to ask where, yes, it might be a very short, sharp answer. So if I say, how many years have you been in business? Okay, they might just come back and say, I've been in business for 5 years. That's fine, but try and avoid those sort of yes/no answers. The second big mistake I see here is ignoring the info that they share with you. So this react-respond stage is super important. This is what makes it not be an interrogation. You need to react to what they say. You need to reference back to what they're saying to you so that it keeps the conversation flowing more like an authentic conversation you would have in real life. And last but not least, don't get impatient. It can feel challenging when you're trying to drive these conversations forward, particularly if you're sending a message and it's taking quite a while for them to respond. Just accept that's part of the process. And it's great, like when somebody is responding, you want to try and keep them responding as much as you can. But if they disappear for a while, then you can always just send them a little bump later on to remind them to continue the conversation with you. Getting impatient comes across in the messages, and you can tell when somebody's just trying to drive you towards an end goal of their conversation and they're not actually present in the conversation that you're having. So instead, what we want, use open-ended questions like I've shown you with this framework and with the qualifying questions examples that I gave you before. Be sure to follow the React question bridge framework up here to create that engaging, ongoing conversation. I always try and make sure that I give more than I take in the conversation. So I'm genuinely having a conversation as if it was somebody that I met at a convention, for example, and I want them to walk away from that conversation feeling like they learned something, feeling better about themselves, or feeling like they know where to go next, regardless of what happens next in our conversation. The more you do that, the more you're just going to build up a network of people that even if they're not ready to pull the trigger with you right now, they're going to become part of your sphere of influence, and over time they will come back or they will refer somebody to you. It will happen. So just, like I say, try and give more than you take in these conversations. So now we've done that. We've gone back and forth. We've gone through our qualifying questions. And usually once we get to around this stage where we've asked them what's preventing them from getting to the goal that they have in mind, is now when we're going to transition to the invite stage of our process, which is once we know we can help them, we want to make the ask, we want to make the call to action, but we want to do it in a natural way, a non-salesy, straight pitch. These are 3 of my favorite lines that I like using for transitioning from the talk stage to the invite stage. So number 1, so actually helping people get off shark-infested islands is literally what we do. Would you like some help with that at all? Obviously, this one I'm tying back to our funny image earlier on, just to give you an example. But just the soft line of would you like some help with that at all, instead of, once again, assuming that they want help, assuming that they're looking for somebody like you. Let's just give them that bridge to latch onto. The second one and third one are more generic, but also very good examples of what works well for me. Sounds like you've tried a few things that haven't worked. Would it be helpful if I showed you how we approach this? So once again, you're not really even pitching them anything yet. You're just saying, hey, can I show you how I would approach the problem that you're having, or how, even better yet, how I have approached the exact problem or a very similar problem to the one that you're facing with some of my existing clients, projects, whatever it may be. The third one, we help people with exactly this type of thing. Want to jump on a quick call and I'll show you how we, and then insert blank, how we get people off shark infested islands, how we help people lose 10 pounds in 10 days, how we help get people's accounts tidied up so that they can stress less about where all their money's going, how we help people put practices in place to help strengthen their mental well-being so that they can handle stressful situations more easily. You can see how you can fill the blanks in here, and really, once again, you're making a soft pitch. You're not outright saying, buy my thing, sign up to my program. You're extending an olive branch, essentially saying, hey, I have seen other people go through this. I have answers. I have ways that I've helped people through this process. Let me show you, or would you like me to show you how to get there? More often than not, at this stage, people are going to come back and they're going to say, yes, I'd love to understand more. Yes, I'd love to see how you do it. It's very seldom by the time I get them to this stage that I just get outright no's, no thank yous. It does happen, but generally by the time you've had an engaging conversation, if you've really understood the goals that they have and the pain points that are preventing them from getting there, and you work that into one of these 3 scripts, then they've really got no reason to say no at this point. You still haven't pitched them anything. You're just saying, can I show you how I would solve the problem that you're having? Which, like I say, 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, they have nothing to lose by saying yes. And so that's exactly what will happen. And from there, you can then transition into how you want to show them that last piece of value. For me personally, at this stage, I try and get them on a phone call, or a Zoom call, I should say, rather, where I can then take them through a bit of a presentation, get to know them better, and follow my standard sales process. But I have worked on and seen many other ways work very well with this. So once again, it could be, hey, let me invite you into our Facebook group, and I will tag you in a few different posts that I think will be relevant to what we've just discussed. It could be, hey, I've got this workshop coming up this weekend, and it would be great to have you join, and then I can show you how problem ABC would be solved through XYZ process that we have. Once again, lots of different ways that you can then transition a response to one of these 3 questions to what you want the call to action to be. If you need help with how to do that, then let me know. Always happy to help you with crafting the responses. This week in particular, and the next few weeks, as you really start going through this process, what I would expect is that you will start maybe getting a little bit stuck with how to keep the conversations going, getting a little bit stuck with how to transition people into the invite stage. And so I really encourage everybody to take screenshots of the conversations that you're having when you get stuck, drop them in the group, and let's actually look at them together as a group and provide feedback on how to transition the conversation, how to keep it going, or how to move it into the invite stage and get them onto a call. That's it for this week's lesson, everyone. But in terms of homework for this week, really you're going to be going deep into these conversations now. So the 3 things I want you to focus on: have conversations, not interrogations, like we talked about. To do that, use the React Question Bridge framework that I've just shown you. And please post conversations in the group, and whether that's the Slack channel or the Facebook group, wherever is easiest for you. The best way I can help you is if you show me the conversations that you're having, and I can actually help you script up exactly what I would say in those situations to keep the conversations going, to transition them into an invite, into a call to action. I can't do that if I'm flying blind. So post your conversations in the group, and let's help you start driving all of the momentum that you've built over the last few weeks now into the invite stage. I know this stage can feel a little bit awkward. I know it can feel strange starting to pitch and put yourself out there. But it's like anything. When it's new, it feels uncomfortable. Once you've done it 1,000 times, it's going to feel normal, and you'll just know exactly what to say to move conversations along, exactly what to say to get them to the stage where they take action and book a call, join your group, download your guide, whatever it may be. So push through the awkward phase, and you're going to have a set of skills for life that you can transfer to generating business for yourself, generating leads for yourself, no matter what the business is, no matter what the social media algorithm is. These are skills that are transferable to everything, every social media platform now and into the future. And as you've seen from the process, it's authentic, it's engaging. We're not using any sleazy sales tactics or anything like that. So this process will stand the test of time. I have no doubt about that. So thanks everyone for coming along on this journey with us, and I hope to see you and your conversations in our group.